are Zionists, and they demand that we accept the Fed story, and their panic is making me think that we're getting closer to something, and that something is pretty big, and it's going to imply a lot of people. I don't know. Today I'm going to tell you guys about a particular person who is connected to Charlie Kirk and January 6th. So welcome back to Candace. Here, before we get further into the Charlie Kirk story and speaking about January 6th and how somehow that's connected, there's something I learned that's bothering me. I'm just going to put it out there, see if it bothers you as well. But I learned via tips that the feds immediately seized the footage at Timpanogos Hospital. Okay, Timpanogos Hospital. Remember, this is the hospital that it was quite strange that they moved to take Charlie to because it was further and also less equipped than UV Hospital. Like, it was like UV was a trauma 1 and Timpanogos was trauma 3, and a bunch of people said very strange that they took him here. And then it got strange because we started hearing from other people that he was definitely at UV Hospital. It was very weird. Anyways, I'd like to add to that by saying that on the day that Charlie was shot, for whatever reason, Kash Patel injects himself into it, the feds seized all of the footage at the hospital that Charlie was brought to at Timpanogos. That doesn't make sense to me. Nothing makes sense to me in this whole story. So this is just kind of the icing on, on the top here. Not even the icing on the top, but why would they move to seize that footage? How is that going to help their investigation? What's happening inside of Timpanogos? How is that going to help their investigation, their immediate boots on the ground investigation into who shot Charlie Kirk? They're on a manhunt. Why are they going, okay, let's at first grab the footage at Timpanogos? Does that make sense? Were you worried? Did a nurse call 911 and say, oh, a guy just ran in here with a gun and you need to seize the footage because that's going to help you track him down? If that didn't happen, why are you seizing that footage? I don't know. With everything that is going on, and I would say almost the lack of information that we have at Timpanogos, not a single person who captured them pulling up, nothing, despite the fact that there were news cameras outside waiting, oddly from like a New York news channel. We have not seen anything regarding that we can build in competently on our timeline that would let us know what time in particular Charlie arrived at the hospital. And I feel like something's amiss if the feds move to grab the footage inside of the hospital immediately and outside of the hospital immediately. So just putting it out there. If you maybe were somebody who has footage and saw that black SUV pull up at the hospital, please get that to us at moretips@CandaceOwens.com, because it's starting to bother me. Something there is starting to feel amiss. Everything's amiss. Anyway, there also happens to be another interesting constellation that's building here, because as I said at the top, there is something about this investigation into Charlie Kirk and who assassinated him that is causing extremely powerful people to panic. A network of powerful people. And by powerful people, I mean the feds, okay? I don't know about you, but I'm starting to wonder if every major publicly traumatizing event may have actually just been organized by the feds. And rather than blaming themselves, the strategy that they always employ is to get out a narrative, a sloppy narrative, like we saw this time with the Charlie Kirk assassination. That is one thing that I will say is so amazing. The only thing that has been amazing about the Charlie Kirk assassination is that it has brought the left and the right together. What I mean by that is typically we're ready to take the Fed slop. This time it was the messages, obviously, and they're like, oh, my dad's MAGA. He was MAGAing too hard. And the left was supposed to go, see, it's his dad's fault. MAGA's bad. And then the right was supposed to go, look, he trans person bad. This time, though, we all went, this is too evil. It feels orchestrated. And do you guys always do this? Like, is this what you guys do? That definitely, now that I'm reflecting, and I am including myself in this, that was kind of my old vibe, left or right. That was definitely the vibe of January 6th, right? We all took the bait, just own it, okay? If you're a lefty, own it. You were like, MAGA is bad. If you're on the right, own it. We were like, the left is bad. They're overthrowing an election. We did it. On January 6th, 2020, I can tell you where I was. I was 9 months pregnant, my first child. and I was super MAGA at this time, I would have definitively gone to this Stop the Steal rally, but I was just too pregnant to go. And I was living in DC, so it was just down the street from me. And I reflect on that and I think, wow, that saved me, because I could have been swept up in what happened on January 6th. I could have been there. We all know how the story goes. Trump hosts this speech, he has this rally, and then afterward, people, quote unquote, storm the Capitol, break through the barriers, and there's an insurrection, and CNN is showing these clips and the footage. And it's funny for me, especially because I was right up the road, and as a resident of DC, literally living there. And I was thinking how strange it was. I was sitting on the couch with my husband, and we start getting all these phone calls, like from my sisters and family members asking if we're okay. And we didn't have the news on, and we're like, yeah, we're okay. So strange that you're calling. We don't even hear any noise. And it was actually the first time that there was peace in DC, meaning it was the summer of BLM riots. So it was strange that we never got called when people's cars were getting smashed and things were being burned to the ground. But suddenly we were getting phone calls because the media was there, you know, right there. MAGA's gone too far, and they were showing all this footage, and it was out of place, right? Now, I knew instantly as a DC resident that the feds were involved because of the pipe bombs. That was it. I knew they were involved when I heard that pipe bombs were mysteriously dropped off the night before at the DNC headquarters, RNC headquarters, and we just don't know who did that, because I live there. And it's the Capitol. So every square inch, there's a camera. You just can't do that. You can't just get away from being a couple of blocks away from the White House and dropping off pipe bombs, right? Anyways, this weekend, after 5 long years, finally, the person, and I'll say allegedly, because I guess we're gonna have to wait for the feds to dispute this, but the person responsible for dropping off those pipe bombs was revealed to be a Fed. More specifically, a 31-year-old woman and a United States Capitol Police officer named Shawnee Ray Kirkuff, right? A reporter named Steve Baker, which deserves all of the credit on this amazing discovery. And I'm going to let you listen to Glenn Beck, who is interviewing Steve Baker, to tell you about how he came across this footage and how that went down.
When I stumbled on what I stumbled on, and because as I said, I've been pulling these threads for years, and I pulled one last Wednesday, 2 weeks ago today, rather. And when I pulled this thread, I was so shocked by what I saw, I immediately took it to a source in one of the most important, highest level investigative federal agencies in the country. I immediately took it to our sources there, and I said, you have to see this. After they looked at it for about 2 hours, the response that I got back was, holy F. And then the follow-up response was, she's one of us.
And when you find out the position, I mean, this is going to lead, it's not just this one person. This now will implicate so many people at the highest levels that had to have known because of what happened after January 6th. I mean, it's I mean, how big does this net get?
How big does this net get? I'm feeling this way about the Charlie Kirk investigation. A lot of people are going to get swept up in this investigation, perhaps the same people that are going to get swept up in the January 6th. And it's not going to be this left or right story, right? Now, much more is going to come out. I'm not here to cover all of January 6th and what they have been unpacking. More will come out in the coming days. What we do know is, like I said, this was a 5-year investigation. It involved forensic analysis. A CIA spokeswoman, Liz Lyons, stated that Shawnee Kirkuff, the alleged person who dropped off these pipe bombs, worked in Capitol Police campus security. She lives in Alexandria, Virginia. She is apparently now under the watch of law enforcement officers because the Blaze News editor-in-chief decided to pull up to her house to just kind of see if any action was happening at her home. And then he instantly got stopped by local police before they allowed him to leave. Now, surprise, surprise, I think it's always the feds. And we might be being ruled by criminals. Like, I don't know, Jeffrey Epstein who?
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
We're still talking about Jeffrey Epstein, Trumpy. Now, if we are allowed to follow this idea that the feds are behind major politically divisive events, then we have to ask ourselves who exactly was behind organizing the Stop the Steal rally event itself. And interestingly enough, on the quote unquote Republican side, Christian Zionist pastors were heavily involved in not just influencing the public, right? Understanding right away, telling the public, the Republicans, that we had to fight for justice. They went out immediately following the election results. One person was Lance Wallnau. Okay, I want you to remember this guy's name, Lance Wallnau. Immediately, just 3 days after the election of 2020, on November 6th, he publishes this onto his Facebook page, okay? It says, "We're going to expose the fraud and stop the steal. The Lord our God is with us, and we were built for this battle. Be strong and courageous." So that's 3 days after he's saying, stop the steal, be strong, be courageous. And Lance, who is a charismatic preacher, wasn't the only charismatic preacher or pastor that instantly threw their weight behind, quote unquote, stopping the steal. Actually, 4 out of the 6 protest permits that were issued on January 6th were issued to independent, charismatic Christian groups, okay? 15 of these pastors and leaders surrounded Trump at the White House leading up to the January 6th Stop the Steal rally, telling him that the war was now spiritual. So they're in his ear. This is spiritual. This is what you have to do, Mr. President. Okay, there's an article about that. It's the New Apostolic Reformation drove the January 6th riots. So why was it overlooked by the House Select Committee, this person asks, okay? NAR, I brought this up to you before. Lance Wallnau is in this article. So is Sean Feucht. Now you're thinking these names might sound familiar. Certainly Sean Feucht, I brought him up to you regarding TPUS Faith, who started to lead these events that they were having. So who is Lance Wallnau? Well, he is one of these NAR preachers, like I said, who came up with their 7 Mountain Mandate, okay? Charlie began to become very interested in the 7 Mountain Mandate. I would say like he became mesmerized by the 7 Mountain Mandate. He became friends with Lance Wallnau. I'm going to let you listen to Lance himself describe this 7 Mountain Mandate in his own words.
Hi, I'm Lance Wallnau. I want to talk to you for a moment about this concept called the 7M Mandate. In reality, it started with a conversation I had in the year 2000. I had been talking to Lauren Cunningham, who's the founder of Youth with a Mission. And Lauren was sharing with me about a conversation he had had with Bill Bright. The two of them were visited, actually, by the Lord within the same 24 hours. And God spoke to them and said they had a message to give the other man. And the message was that there are 7 molders of culture, or 7 world kingdoms, and that he who could take those kingdoms could take the harvest of nations. Now, this illustration is the way I see it. I look at it this way. I see those 7 molders of culture as being the religion mountain, as a metaphor for something you've got to take or climb. Then we have education, we could say, family. These are in no particular order of importance. They all represent the forces that shape societies and nations. Government, media, art, which is the entertainment mountain, and business, which is where we have the economics mountain happening also. Now, these 7 fields of influence are very powerful, so powerful, in fact, that he who occupies the top of those mountains can literally shape the agenda that forms nations. The foundation of the prosperity of nations is going to have to be the teaching of Jesus. The good news is you can do that covert or you can do that overt. You can be, like I always say, you could actually be following that thing from Jehovah Rofi, Jehovah Nisi, Jehovah Sidkenu, or Jehovah Sneaky. Because God has a way of getting you into positions, companies, businesses, nations, and communities before the devil even knows what got in there. Because the gospel is bigger than just the church mountain. It's the gospel that covers the whole earth.
So what he's describing there and what they believe is that there are new prophets, there are new apostles, they have the 7 Mountain Mandate. And when he is speaking about covertly, he means that, okay? This is a philosophy of infiltration. He says, but before people even know, boom, he describes it as the devil, before people know, boom, everyone around them is actually working for a higher purpose. Man, I gotta say, kind of sort of reminds me of what happened to Charlie, right? This is kind of where this is going. Turning Point Faith, everywhere that I'm investigating, Turning Point Faith keeps coming up. These characters keep coming up, and there's a pattern that I'm noticing that a lot of these mainstream pastors and preachers actually come from high-ranking military families. High-ranking military families that have been around for a long time, ties to the Navy, ties to the Air Force. Frank Turek, Air Force, Rob McCoy, we discussed about his background, his naval background, psychological operations. They're literally named like a fleet of ships after his father. Like there was like the McCoy Naval something. Lance Wallnau, he's no different. He graduated from a military academy. His father, Carl Wallnau, was a major in the United States Air Force. Okay, Wallnau served under General Patton. After the war, he then continued his adventures as a field engineer for Standard Oil. Okay, building high-pressure liquid propane installations throughout political revolutions in the world. So he would go and do that in Haiti, in Cuba, Dominican Republic. Places that I would argue that we cause a lot of drama in. I'm just saying. So Lance fits the pattern well. And before I tell you how he is very connected to Turning Point USA Faith, I do want to also be clear that Frank Turek stands out because he flat out acknowledged on one of his podcasts that NAR was a cult, actually darker than a cult. Take a listen to what Frank Turek said about NAR.
So technically a group, and NAR stands for what again?
I'm sorry, the New Apostolic Reformation.
That's Bill Johnson out there in California, Northern California. We'll talk about him in a minute. But Word of Faith movement, they don't necessarily add, subtract, multiply, or divide, but their hermeneutic, the way they interpret the scriptures, is aberrant. Yes. And they interpret the scriptures in such a way that their practice follows this aberrant theology that they have, and they wind up doing things that are more new agey or more even occult-like than they are Christian.
The occult, and that is correct. Now, Frank Turek, this didn't stop him. It didn't make him go warn Charlie about this in any way, as these people began to infiltrate his organization, and Lance Wallnau worked his way into Turning Point USA. I had a phone call with someone, by the way, who's extremely close to this current administration, and they said, completely offhandedly, we were not even really discussing Charlie, but then they said, you know, something that's really weird. I was at Charlie's memorial. She said, when did Turning Point become so faith-focused? She's like, I remember, obviously, Charlie always spoke about his evangelical faith. She's like, but when you guys were running around starting all these Turning Point chapters, it was all about free markets and capitalism. And she was like, and I was at the rally, and it was suddenly faith, 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 pastor, 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 pastor. And I said, you know, that is actually interesting. That is true, that it just kind of started, and then it was almost the biggest thing about Turning Point. It's really interesting to consider that. Turning Point suddenly got super de-duper faithful with what I would say is an interesting cast of characters, the wrong characters. Okay, Rob McCoy leading that frontier, as we know. What people don't know publicly is that Lance Wallnau was working with him, okay? He was intimately involved, and more importantly, he was financially involved. Sources within Turning Point's faith department tell me that Lance was running the show behind the scenes through funding, that he put a ton of money into Turning Point USA faith operations. Now, I guess a better way for me to state this, because I want to be super clear here, is that Lance Wallnau, who is from a military family and who is saying that he believes in infiltration as a means to climb mountains and overtake society, however he just described that, right, was privately directing large sums of money into Turning Point Faith. Okay, he's friends with Rob McCoy, and he eventually did tour stops with Turning Point Faith. And he knew Charlie. He said Charlie was his friend. I think truly as a society that we need to start focusing our attention, okay, independently. Village Crazy Lady, I told you guys about Mel on X. She's been doing great work on this, but you need to start investigating this faith military constellation. We can call it the militant faith pipeline, because it's getting a little much for me. I mean, I told you guys, you start looking at that and you wonder about other events that have happened in the past, right? There were a ton of conspiracies following October 1st, 2017, when the Las Vegas shooting happened. Largest mass shooting in American history. And it was almost instantly covered up. 58 people were murdered. More than 600 others were injured. And they told us that it was just a lone shooter, Stephen Paddock, some crazy guy who acted alone. Conspiracy theorists said it was a military operation, and there was a ton of evidence to support that. Okay? Fast forward a year later, on November 7th of 2018, and there's almost this like Las Vegas shooting hangover that happens in Thousand Oaks, California. Oddly, about 40 people who were at the Las Vegas shooting were all at the Borderline bar one night when a Marine, whose family knows Rob McCoy, well, Rob McCoy is friends with that Marine, that Marine's mother decides to storm into a bar and conduct a mass shooting. And a victim of that bar shooting was a 27-year-old Navy veteran who had survived the Las Vegas shooting. So it just makes me wonder, was he a victim or was he a target, right? We have to start asking these questions. This is a headline from the BBC regarding the Las Vegas shooting, the Thousand Oaks shooting at the Borderline Bar and Grill. The Las Vegas shooting survivor being among the dead. We're not getting answers to any of these questions, and they're telling everybody that these are just conspiracies. It's always a conspiracy when you start questioning these fed narratives. One survivor said that the group of them were meeting up for a second time in about a year, having, I guess, like a little Las Vegas reunion, and that's why they were all there. The point being is, following this, a month after this, Rob McCoy then gets elected mayor of Thousand Oaks. He's mayor for a year. And I'm just starting to ask a lot of questions about what is happening here. Who is funding these groups? Who is funding these pastors? Who is funding these churches? We're getting a lot of weird stories about these churches that are coming out. I shared something over the weekend about Romanian sex trafficking on my X feed that is involving one of these churches, one of these big churches out in California. And I'm saying it's time to start prodding the narrative, because I'm thinking that perhaps faith has been hijacked. And like I said, and we are going to have some explosive stuff for you on Wednesday that we have discovered about this Charlie case. The faith element is compelling, and I am not convinced that these people that stand on stages and tell you to stop following Tucker Carlson are working on behalf of the Lord, okay? I don't think that that's the case. I think these people that are telling you that you are not allowed to question Israel or you're going to go to hell are not working on behalf of God. I think that they worship specific people with military ties. In fact, they are just following orders. But there's a picture here that's emerging that we should not ignore. So we will pause there before we get into some of these bizarre responses that I've been going through, militant responses that I've been going through on X from Christian Zionists. We'll be right back. All right, you guys, I'm going to tell you about Preborn, because not just Ali Stuckey, you're exhausting Grok. So many lies are being made up about me. If you don't have time to look at the facts and see what we've come up with, and that's fine, but you're not required to interject here. I just want everybody to know that. Grok, Ali, everyone, you are not required to take part in this, and we're not stopping, okay? And I just sense that we're getting close. And when I tell you on Wednesday what we discovered about those Egyptian military planes, I think some more people are going to be on the run. Anyways, the oddest response came from Mark Levin, who has been kind of psychopathically obsessed with destroying Tucker Carlson for years now. He was very happy when Tucker Carlson got fired from Fox News. They don't seem to be friends. And regarding Mark Levin, if a person was actually like, you should move to Israel because it would make you happier, if that was a person, that would be Mark Levin.
That's my baby. Thank you, guys.
You welcome, babe.
No worries in the world right now. Good. Good. Thank you, baby. I appreciate you.
And it's
You
your
know,
back.
stowing back.
It's your back tire behind you that keep going down.
Yeah. Oh man, is there a hole, a needle? I mean,
I
a
don't
nail or
know.
something?
It's the one. I just want you to know it's the tire on the left side and the back.
Left back, because and this thing is like wobbling.
Your car
Yeah,
always
don't-
been wobbling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, your car is a drunk.
It's a truck. Okay. But
Your car need a car.
Yeah, for real. Real talk. Like seriously, it's time. It's gonna be 6 years I've been driving this vehicle. It's time, and I'm mentally preparing myself for whatever comes. I don't want to hold you. I'll call you when I get there.
Okay, bud.
I'm about to approach Ponce de Leon.
All right.
I better love you. Be
Love you
careful.
too.
Bye.
Bye bye. Hang up.
You gotta hang up. I'm in curve mode, and I'm at. I don't know what I'm
I got to
I'm
keep
doing
my
60.
eyes open, baby.
Your eyes are not open.
No, I'm on adrenaline.
Oh, okay. So then maybe I need to stay on the phone with you so we can talk. So I can keep you up. You need to turn the AC on. Turn the window down, fella. Adrenaline. Yeah, I'm making my curve right now. It says slow down. Alright, when I get to this light, I'll turn it off if you need to. I'll say why slow down. Go faster.
Yeah, right.
When you taking those turns, why slow down? Go faster.
Yeah. Increase the risk. Go ahead.
Just think, things much. It's not as bad as it sounds. I'll be watching NASCAR with you, and when they turn and they be going fast. All right, baby.
Goddamn. Flying this morning. What is the hurry?
Who?
They all got LaShawn-itis.
For me, it's to get off the road because I could barely see.
But you got to be on
That's
the road
fine.
the very next day, and the very next day, and the very next day. I don't understand. You're going to be right back where you were the next day. What's the hurry?
Gotta get there on time. See, I'm extra early. I'm overly extra.
Me too. That's why I'm leaving now.
I like leaving at 4:30. Traffic is better than 5 o'clock.
It's getting thick too. Everybody's starting to catch on.
Yeah. Because I think I had maybe 6 cars on the road with me. Going to 78.
This town getting populated. Atlanta getting populated, more populated, more populated. More cars on the road. You have to leave early to do nothing. How many wrecks you saw yesterday?
Oh my God. Oh my God. It was insane. 20. Then get on 285. Somebody literally, it's like he swerved and hit the side concrete wall. His
Trying to
front
avoid
end
somebody
drove
that jumped
with
in
the
front of him.
ambulance. Yeah, with
When
the
they
ambulance
swerved.
right there. But he swerved and boom. Oh my God. His whole front is done.
He was trying to get out of somebody's way. They jumped in front of him. I hate when they do that. They act like they don't see you. Just jump in front of somebody. Did me like that too. Just jumped right in front of me. Saw me coming. Waited till I got there. And jumped in front of me. The ones I hated is they hit their brakes and all your shit in the passenger seat come to the floor.
I hate them motherfuckers. I literally be wanting to get out my car and say something. You fucking idiot! See, this is how I like Ponce de Leon. With no fucking body. Like, no one. Oh, police. This is Gwinnett. Oh, Gwinnett. Oh, this is
got a
Gwinnett.
friend.
Oh,
You got a
the
friend.
police. Who?
Yeah.
The police.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's sitting right there on the side street as they coming down Ponce.
Waiting on y'all to fuck up.
Yeah. But see, I ride the same speed no matter police there. So I don't slow up because I see like you scaredy cat mofos. See a police and start braking. Chill, son, don't brake now. Keep it going. I'm always dodging these potholes. Are these potholes or manholes? What it's called?
Potholes from the snow.
Okay, and the manholes, these are manholes, the ones that are built into the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, they got a lot of those. And I swear I be playing dodgeball with them. Like, it's either I'm riding over them or I'm riding on the right side of them. And when I come up to this, what is these little gate thingies, pellet thingies? You know how it's, I don't know what these are called, these little light pillars or whatever. I always use both lanes.
I don't know.
You know what these things are on Ponce de Leon? It's like little poles.
What you mean,
That
no
you got.
poles?
You know these little poles right here that you gotta make that curve on Ponce de Leon. Don't worry about it. It's not that.
Maybe you're describing it wrong.
It's poles. It's these yellow looking poles. I don't know if they're lights, solar lights, poles. These little poles that it divides the street and you gotta go around it.
Uh-huh.
No, baby. Oh, this is a bus stop. Okay. I didn't know they had a bus line right here. They got bus stops in weird places, man. Fernbank. I might be too early to go into the parking deck.
Why?
I don't think he opens it till 6.
That don't make no sense.
They'll have red arrows, and then I have to go all the way around to the other entrance. I'm gonna pull up and see because I'm mad early. I'm mad early, like the elevators don't open till 6. So I got an hour to kill. I packed up my car with the blankets and the pillow, just in case. Needs to be prepared. Man, what are these people doing on the road? Hi, baby. Call me when you get settled.
Sure.
Okay?
All
Don't
right.
forget.
I will.
I love you.
Love you too.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
shit. See you later. Not bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So forever. So forever.
See you later, alligator.
After I pack it down. Call me when you get settled.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Stop saying bye.
Okay, dang.
Dora Mabani do what almost no one thought was possible.
Years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the Negro community has arrived at a decision to celebrate this centennial in an all-out effort to achieve full rights now.
You're watching a live national television show that was broadcast in the spring of 1963. It's more than 60 years old, and yet I feel it's so relevant to issues we face in the United States today. It's also amazing because of the eloquence of these 5 American black leaders who are about to discuss the state of the American Negro. I'm David Hoffman, filmmaker. I didn't shoot this, but I was a college senior and I was watching this show on television with my parents. And what I
marched to the Lincoln Memorial and a meeting there. On the way, what was described as a brief demonstration at the White House. But we hope to have this an outpouring of expression on the part of the people who wish Congress and the nation to know how they feel, how very deeply they feel about civil rights legislation. I think it's fair to say, wouldn't you say, Martin, that this is no attempt to blackjack anybody? We want to show how we feel.
Exactly. We are not going to Washington to intimidate any congressman or any senator. It will give a large number of people an opportunity to articulate their longings and aspirations for freedom, their desire to see meaningful, forthright civil rights legislation in this session of Congress. And of course, we also intend to arouse the conscience of the nation over the economic plight of the Negro 100 years after emancipation. And I think it can have a great impact. I think it will dramatize the issue. It will have educational value in that it will allow many people to see and understand the continued indignities and injustices which Negroes confront all over the nation.
All over the country. It has captured the imagination of hundreds of thousands of people. Now, we don't know how many of them will be marching to Washington, but a goodly number will. They feel keenly about this, and they want the seat of government. They want the American conscience to know how they feel.
You're aware that the president has cautioned that he would just as soon have the march postponed or not occur.
We see this as an all-inclusive demonstration of our belief in the president's program, and since it has been declared to be an orderly demonstration with a rally, at which time I hope to be one of the people who will speak in the interest of the Urban League toward preparing people for the new opportunities. At this level, we will be cooperating.
And I think it's important that the march go off because there is legislation which many people have gone to jail for the substance. That is, the lunch counter demonstrations throughout the South have to be sort of brought to some climax, and it could be done in this public accommodations bill, which is before the Congress. Then, of course, it just left the Delta and a lot of poor people over there, people who make $2.25 a day for 12 hours of work. And so some legislation has to come out of the Congress of the United States to deal with these problems.
People like Agnes Myers, Roy, president of the board of the NAACP, and other white liberals and friends have cautioned against having a major demonstration for civil rights this summer. How do you...
Well, it's our position in the NAACP that the opponents of civil rights legislation left no doubt as soon as the president spoke. In fact, they didn't wait for him to speak. They began announcing their opposition and what they intended to do. They were going to filibuster, they were going to hold up appropriation measures, they were scaring the country that they weren't going to get a tax cut on account of civil rights. They're doing all the boogeyman stunts. And if they're going to use Washington as their base of operations for opposition to this bill, we don't see anything wrong with using Washington as our base to indicate support for this bill. And in my estimation, this march is going to be a 100% outpouring of the disgust and distress of black Americans and white liberals over the way the Congress has handled this bill.
I think that in any such demonstration as the march, which is planned, you would expect loud outpouring of cries, of fears from many, many people who don't want it to take place, who are afraid that something might happen. But it seems to me that it reflects a lack of understanding of the nature of the times in which we are living. The fact that Negroes all over the country are concerned and are aroused and must express their feeling. They waited 100 years, and that's too long to wait.
But what about white friends and liberals who have worked in these organizations for many years, who now say, look, let's not go this fast. Let's not...
We don't have people like that. I'm sorry. Our telephone is ringing with white people who want to get into the march.
We don't judge our friends on the basis of the color of their skin. We judge them on the basis of the fact of whether or not they are willing to go all the way with us. If they are not willing to go all the way, then they are not friends of ours.
Now, we've said that these are interracial organizations, but you five gentlemen are Negroes. You are assuming the leadership, and you are asking white liberals and white friends to go along with the Negro speaking for himself rather than speaking through white surrogates.
I would like to make this point because I think there is a misconception that any white people who happen to serve on your boards or committees are therefore automatically there to exercise control and restraint. This is not the experience of the Urban League. There are many white people who serve on our boards who are asking for more militancy. I speak for the National Urban League at their insistence, not at my demanding, because they feel that a Negro is best able to express the hopes and the longings of his people.
We ought to be clear that there is a desire on the part of Negroes for self-expression through leadership of civil rights organizations. This is important because Negroes have been denied that self-expression for so many years. But this does not mean, in any sense of the word, as far as I'm concerned, that white persons who are sincere cannot participate and cooperate.
Exactly.
And I think it's very important to have this participation. I think it would be very dangerous and even tragic if the struggle in the United States for civil rights degenerated to a racial struggle of blacks against whites, so to speak.
Amen.
It is a tension between justice and injustice, and we enlist consciences in the struggle. We appreciate the participation in this movement of white persons of goodwill, and we have many of them, fortunately, and I think the number's growing every day, and this helps to keep the struggle on the level that it should be on.
Sure. As far as I can understand you gentlemen, this is not a racist march. This is a march of aroused Americans who want to demonstrate and assume their rights to petition their Congress and support the president's civil rights legislation. The Attorney General would seem to disagree with you in terms of his testimony for Congress. He says that the most disturbing thing for Negroes is the public accommodation segregation.
The truth of the thing is that it's a vicious circle. Unless people are adequately educated, they can't possibly find good jobs. And unless people can find good jobs, they can't buy good housing, which puts them in good neighborhoods where they can get a good education. So instead of being one major thing, it's a group of things.
Yes, that's true, but it seems to me, of course, that the public accommodations matter, which is now being batted around in the Senate Commerce Committee, is the most abrasive and pervasive of the aspects of a Negro's life. Every time he steps out of his front door in the morning until he comes home at night, he runs the risk, and some of them don't run the risk, they run the certainty of this kind of denial and humiliation and mistreatment. And sometimes in the South, as you well know, in many subtle ways. You walk into a store and you're the next one to be waited on, but 3 white people come up and they get waited on first. This is a matter, Negroes meet this. In many places they have to ride on the back of the bus. And they do want a Coca-Cola and can't get it. Now these seem small things, but and I think the Attorney General was talking about the things that rub people the wrong way and make them say, oh, let's get rid of it, you know.
And, you know, there are other areas of life which are very subtle, but which are not even being covered in the bill. And then there's some pronounced ways. I'm just thinking of the fact that you drive through the South. In some states, you can't even stop at the restrooms, and this is humiliating to women, you know, and it's very...
And of course, uncomfortable.
Well, it's very uncomfortable, but it's one of these little daily things. But I think that there are 2 areas that should be covered, you know, and that's the question of the voting bill. I don't see why we can't have universal suffrage for all Negroes. I mean, I really don't see why it has to be just a 6th grade education level, because that's a device, and I think we were talking beforehand about how many people would be covered.
The Nonviolent Coordinating Committee is putting a great deal of its effort on voting, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we have a great program now, and I think in the Delta of Mississippi, but Roy might want to amplify on just how many people would be covered by a 6th grade education.
Well, the literacy test bill, you know, we agreed, we estimated, we couldn't, that not more than 100,000 Negroes would be added to the rolls under the literacy test. This is, Martin, you remarked on the number of people who didn't have a 6th grade education in one state. For 58%, I think it was, in Louisiana.
Who testified before the House and suggested universal suffrage. I mean, there's just no reason why a person is not 21, he can't vote. He can go into the Army whether he can read or write. So why shouldn't he be able to vote?
And this is no sign that the person isn't intelligent, that the person doesn't have some basic intelligence, but because of discrimination and other conditions, many of these people haven't had an opportunity to get an education, and I think they should have the right to vote, and this is very basic.
No president has recommended a bill of this scope before, regardless of how we who suffer may feel its limitations, and I think we ought to work with that. Dangerous, as Jim has said, Jim Farmer has said, to pick out priorities, and because the opposition will start concentrating on your target. They say, well, what do you think is the number 1? And this is, we have to avoid.
Roy, you made the point that no president, in certainly my lifetime, has made this kind of civil rights recommendation to Congress. Why do you think President Kennedy did this?
He did it because a crisis was created that demanded the attention of the nation on the highest level. Just like, a dust bowl is something beyond the state, beyond the region, and demands federal action. A great disaster like Texas City demands national action. A great flood demands national action. And here we have a crisis in human rights brought about by in great part, by all of us, of course, but triggered by a man who sits around this table. And I think there's no doubt that Birmingham dramatized and brought into focus what Martin Luther King and his associates did in Birmingham, made the nation realize that at last the crisis had arrived.
It's necessary, it seems to me, and I just like to throw this out, to keep a considerable amount of pressure on. I mean, that is, a Negro does not, say in Mississippi, for instance, he has no constitutional means, that is, Eastland does not represent him, to achieve some solution, and this has to come from the government, or either he simply has to demonstrate. In other words, segregation may be like a piece of old iron, you put it in the fire to heat it up. And that so that people outside of Mississippi have to become conscious of what is going on there. For instance, there are 45 people in jail right now whose trials were held today for simply being at a voter registration meeting and someone threw a smoke bomb in the church, and they marched down to the Justice of the Peace office to protest, or rather to the deputy sheriff, and they were arrested for disturbing the peace. And these are old ladies, some of them 75 years old, but yet they want to stay in jail.
The people that have the vote don't realize how much they could do by writing a letter.
That's right.
A congressman said to me, I have 8 letters on civil rights. 8 from his district. 8. And 5 of those were from white people. Now, you don't have to write a polemic. You just have to write a postcard saying, please vote for the Civil Rights Bill.
In traveling around the country, however, I hear many people make utterances which seem to indicate that they think the millennium will have arrived after we get civil rights legislation. That is not the case. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Even if we get the entire package that the president asked, plus various of the other good bills that are pending before Congress, a good legislation does not automatically enforce itself. We then have a problem of seeing to it that it is enforced in town after town, city after city, and only the will of the people will bring about the enforcement.
I would like to say that I have faith that the American people today are sufficiently convinced of the determination of Negroes to be truly free and the rightness of that aspiration, that I will be terribly disappointed if there is not a tremendous amount of support from all people for this legislation. But I would agree with Jim Farmer that this will just be, to me, the beginning. It's sometimes a lot easier to get people to walk a picket line than to walk to the library, or to get people to participate, parents to demonstrate, than it is to go to PTA meetings.
One of the heartening things about this aroused conscience that Martin spoke of a moment ago is the unprecedented activity of the organized faiths, the organized religious faiths. I think we're going places on this, but I'd like to put in a little sour note here. And I get some mail that I can't read on television, that I can't exhibit, and the postmaster delivers like this, holding it up by the people who say that Negroes ought to go back to Africa, and you're only apes anyway, and you think we're going to give you a civil rights bill, you're crazy, and we'll run you in the Mississippi River first, and a whole lot of other uncomplimentary things.
I'm really more concerned about the so-called gentle people of prejudice. The people who will say, I'm with you, I am for you, but what about property values, and the man's right to run his business, and what about the standards of the school being lowered? And so for these reasons, who would say, well, maybe you shouldn't have all of this right now. These are the people I'm really concerned about.
Comment on that. I agree with you completely. While I share Roy's concern about the extreme bigots, I'm far more concerned about the good, the decent people who don't throw a bomb as they do in Birmingham or other places in the South, but they quietly pack their bags and move away. And this, it seems to me, is more damaging to our cause and more dangerous to the total cause of integration.
I have an answer for you, gentlemen, but go ahead.
Yeah, I guess, well, I'm concerned about the one in between, going back to Africa and moving away, and that's basically the public officials, you see, who inflict all of this brutality, because the millennium is not going to come, primarily because we have no laws to deal with police brutality in the South, which I think is a fundamental issue in this whole thing.
Jim, I suppose you are very conscious of this because your membership is on the firing line, and
yeah, and I've seen
daily the victims of police.
And Dr. King just came from Danville, and over a month ago we saw 35 people with holes in their heads as big as a sash tray, inflicted by the police. And nothing has been done about it. And the government, it seems to me, ought to do something about this.
What specifically would you suggest for dealing with this?
Well, I would suggest, you see, that the government go in and file some suits. When the constitutional rights of a person is denied, the government ought to file a suit in behalf of that person. I think this gets back to Part 3.
That's right.
Now, the government says that the existing laws are inadequate, but yet they're not asking, or it is not asking, for adequate laws in this legislation.
I think the only thing that changes the mind of a policeman like that is to sue him and to convict him and to convince him that the Constitution has some control over that billy club he has in his hand.
Is there anyone who is planning to do this?
Well, now we're entering into one of the most difficult areas of civil rights, because the whole area of convicting a policeman for depriving a man of his civil rights has to be proved down to the last period and comma. Not only that, his intent has to be proved.
Jim?
Yes, I think we have an additional weapon, and that is the ballot.
Yes,
the vote, and which is why all of us here are pushing a voter registration drive. If Negroes are registered in large numbers down there in Greenwood, then the police, of course, will take a different point of view. And in Danville also. Exactly. Because they'll know then that they have to be responsible and responsive not only to white voters, but to Negro voters as well.
White people in the South and in the North need education on this matter. I don't mean education on humanity as to Negroes, but they need education on the constitutional rights of Negroes and on the fact that he's a citizen. He's been here 344 years, and to hear some of them talk, they'd say, look what we're doing for you people.
If you've never been in Mississippi, and Roy was born, and I just have to get back because I think I have to just try to help her. Well, I'm sorry, your family was. I was raised down there, and I want to talk about these people. See, I think the president ought to go through Mississippi because I don't think he has any conception, any visual conception. Intellectually, he knows the suffering that's going on there. But just to see some of these shacks that people are living in, it's frightening in a sense, you know, down in Itta Bena. You know, it's just a very depraved area. Itta Bena?
Yeah. I've been to Itta Bena.
Isn't it a depraved?
Oh,
it's pitiful.
I think what we need to get at here is if we could get the total society to somehow lose this making a god of state rights and begin to see citizens as national citizens. Right. Because what's actually happened in this country is much of the miseducation, lack of education altogether, much of the social disorganization we see in the North that concerns us can directly be traced back to the indifference of the people in the North to the problems of the South. These people later become the welfare load, the crime rate of the North. If we had adopted the concept of a citizen in Mississippi being a citizen of the United States, then we would have avoided all these problems. That's the way they're seen overseas.
That's right.
I think the president ought not only look at the housing in Mississippi, he ought to look at the slum tenements in Harlem and in 100 Harlems across the country. Indeed, we might say that people not only being bitten by dogs in Birmingham, Reverend King, but by the rats in the slum tenements.
Well, aren't we saying, gentlemen, that a program has not yet been worked out to grapple with the magnitude of this problem in the United States, both North and South?
It's not regional.
Right. Isn't there a need now, because of the urgency and the seriousness of the situation, to develop a sort of crash program to lift the standards of the Negro and to get rid of the underlying conditions that produce so many social evils and develop so many social problems? I think this is what we face at this time, and I know it leads to the whole question of discrimination in reverse and all of that. But I think we've got to face the fact in this country that because of the legacy of slavery and segregation and the seeds of injustice planted in the past, that we have this harvest of confusion now, and we're going to continue to have it until we get to the root of the problem.
Well, that's that root and the rats go together.
Yeah.
The announcement of the Real Estate Brokers Association some time ago advising their members not to pay any attention to fair housing laws, that property rights still came first. And when you think of the billions of dollars in this country tied up in real estate, there isn't much that the President of the United States could do by going and looking at some slums, let's be fair.
Yeah. Well,
The real power and obstacle there is the property rights structure in this country, which isn't concerned with how many kids are bitten by rats or how many people live in slums.
Most of you recall that we did announce recently, our board adopted this domestic Marshall Plan, and this was consciously given this name because, if you recall, this country has spent some $12 billion on rehabilitation of Europe, war-torn Europe. In a 4-year period, we have spent millions on refugees from Cuba and from Hungary. We spent all kinds of money giving free education to veterans after the war and making it possible for them to buy homes. I think the time has come for us to honestly face up to the fact that this tremendous gap due to historical deprivation that the Negro has suffered will not be closed not quickly enough unless we consciously and deliberately establish programs that call not just for equal schools, but better schools and better teachers and provisions for housing and conscious recruiting at the level of employment. This has to be done in order to get rid of what I see too much of, and that is the feeling of despair and hopelessness.
I think that Negroes have had special treatment in this country for 350 years, special treatment of a negative sort.
That's right.
Now what Whitney and the rest of us are asking for is some special treatment of a positive sort to wipe out that gap.
Are you united in this, or is there any...
Well, I want to be understood
Yes,
on it.
but I'm not asking people to have people who aren't qualified.
And we're not asking to skip over white people or to deny white people their chance, but we're saying that just giving the Negro an equal break is not enough.
I wonder, gentlemen, if you're in asking for this special break, you're not asking for a special break for the nation rather than just for the Negro.
Oh, indeed. Look, if this country, if this doesn't, they don't solve the human rights problem of the Negro.
Right. The manpower problem.
This country morally is sunk. Absolutely.
Well, what about the practical manpower? Resources.
They've been suffering from manpower all along, and I anticipate what Jim's going to say. Not only morally sunk, but they'll be sunk.
They'll be sunk economically, too.
Economically, politically, and morally.
The President's Council of Economic Advisors said some months ago that discrimination in jobs against Negroes costs the country something like $13 billion a year.
If you gentlemen are correct that it cannot survive without instituting justice, is it possible that the society will choose not to survive rather than to...
Not consciously. Not consciously.
Well...
No, I seem to sense that increasingly more people are beginning to see integration as an opportunity and not just a problem. The fact
are
that
these only articulate people, though? Are these only the people to whom you talk? What about the masses of American whites? Could it be that they are so conditioned to hate Negroes that they would rather see the society go under rather than to provide...
No, well, not the masses. Politicians might articulate.
No, the average white person in this country doesn't want to see his country go under rather than give a fair deal to the Negro. He believes in a fair deal, but he also wants to protect himself and his job, and I don't blame him.
I have read a number of writers on this, and the most eloquent of the writers seem to me to be Mr. Baldwin. And if I read underneath his lines, there seems to be a deep sense that maybe the American white man is not prepared for survival and justice. But as I listen to you gentlemen talk, you do seem much more optimistic than this, Jim.
Well, Kenneth, I would not go so far as to say that the American white man is prepared not to survive in order to avoid giving Negroes equal rights. But I will say that I would not be prepared at the moment to put our cause to a general referendum in this country.
No.
I don't think we'd win it.
I don't think civil rights are negotiable.
I think I could almost predict what the figure would be. 2-1 against you.
I'm sure it would be.
Well, isn't it true that we're grappling with a problem that constantly emerges in history, that you have a few people who are crusaders in the right direction. You always have a few people who are crusaders in the wrong direction. And the vast majority are out there in the middle somewhere, with a great deal of apathy and complacency. And I think we have this in our country today. The vast majority of people are not active integrationists or active segregationists. They are passive adherents to the status quo.
But
and
they
I
have
think
been
the
socialized
job,
in a society that in which racism is dominant.
I agree, and I think the job here is for the creative minority to work on this large group, because I think these people are pliable, to the legitimate and just demands of the Negro. And I do not choose to follow the path of despair because I think that there is a way out, even though we do have to face the problems that have developed and the conditioning that has developed as a result of this problem existing a long time. But I do think there is a way out, and I think that with the creative minority standing up with determination to solve this problem, we can solve it.
Whenever the American people have been faced with a crisis, they've come through. Now, they may have come through in ragged and bloody fashion, but they've come through. And I'm convinced that they'll come through this one, even though it involves very deep-seated emotions. I think they're going to solve it.
I've always had the feeling that one of the major problems was that the average white citizen somehow drew a correlation between status and exclusiveness, and in many cases racial exclusiveness, so that the more exclusive the neighborhood, the school, the place of employment, the higher his status. Now, I think...
But he's been taught not to like you either.
Yes, but
not
now...
to like you because of the color of your skin.
Yes, but now he must be taught that this is a sign of his basic insecurity. That for years, as Baldwin put it, he has had a reason, a need to feel superior. Now we must change the norm and get people to understand that it is insecurity that makes you want to take advantage and to hate. That only the secure people now can move toward inclusiveness. It is the more intelligent, the more mature people who want this kind of thing, and only the tragically insecure need today to surround themselves with sameness.
Gentlemen, I certainly want to thank you for what certainly is the most stimulating and to me quite instructive discussion. I think that America is indeed fortunate to have men of your breadth, your perspective, your sense of responsibility and intelligence as the leaders of probably the most significant social revolution since the 18th century.